You know that feeling when you're wrestling with code that has to handle individual objects and then also groups of those same objects? Kind of like files inside a directory or maybe graphical shapes in a drawing? It can get super messy really fast. Well, today we're going to untangle that whole knot with a really powerful tool, the Composite Design Pattern.
Okay, let's just dive right in. The whole problem we're solving today boils down to this one question. I mean, think about it. You want to do something simple like display or get size on a single file. Easy enough. But what if you want to do that exact same thing on an entire directory? A directory that's full of files and other directories. The real trick is writing code that just doesn't care if it's talking to one thing or a whole bunch of things.
So the secret here is understanding something called a part-whole hierarchy. Now that sounds super fancy, but really it's just a tree structure. And the perfect everyday example is your computer's file system, right? You've got individual files, those are the parts. And then you have directories that hold those files and can even hold other directories. Those are the wholes. This whole nested structure is exactly what we're trying to figure out how to handle elegantly.
To really appreciate how great the solution is, we first have to feel the pain of the problem. So let's take a look at what happens when you try to build this kind of structure without a good design pattern in your back pocket. It seems logical at first, but trust me, it gets complicated quick. So, what's your first instinct? Probably to create a file class and then a totally separate directory class. Makes sense, right? But hold on. Look what has to happen inside that directory class. To keep track of its contents, it needs not one, but two different lists. One for all its files and another one for all its subdirectories. And that immediately forces you to have different methods like add file and add directory. The separation and the mess, it starts right here. And this is where the real headaches start. First off, just juggling two separate lists is way more complicated than it needs to be. Then, you can't treat anything uniformly. If you want to, say, display the contents of a directory, you have to loop through the file list, and then you have to loop through the directory list, probably calling totally different logic for each one. And what does that lead to? Yep. Duplicated code all over the place, and a system that's just a nightmare to change later on.
It feels clunky because it is clunky. But thankfully, there is a much more elegant way to do this. So let's bring in the composite pattern and see how it completely unifies this structure. Yeah, after seeing how complicated that first approach gets, this is exactly the relief we're looking for. The composite pattern gives us this clean, unified way to handle these tree structures without all the fuss.
And here it is. The composite pattern lets us build those tree structures, just like our file system. But, and this is the absolute key, it lets us treat the individual leaf objects, like our file, and the composite objects, like a directory, in the exact same way. It's like one interface to rule them all.
And this slide right here, this is the aha moment. This shows it all. On the left, you've got our old, clunky way, with two separate lists. Any code using that class has to know the difference between a file and a directory. But on the right, with a composite solution, the directory class has just one single list, a list of file system component. Both file and directory implement that same interface, so they can all live together in one happy list. The client code, it has no idea there's a difference. It just talks to components. So much cleaner.
Okay, so the code is definitely cleaner. But what's the real payoff for you, the developer? Why is this one unified list so much more powerful? Let's break down the actual benefits.
And the benefits are huge. Your client code gets so much simpler because you can get rid of all those messy if-else blocks for handling different types. Managing the whole tree becomes a breeze. An operation like displaying can just cascade all the way down the structure recursively. And it's incredibly scalable. Let's say you want to add a new type, like a symbolic link or something. You just have it implement that same iFile system component interface, and guess what? Your existing directory code doesn't have to change one bit. Now, it's pretty easy to get these structural patterns confused, so this is important. You might be thinking, hey, what about a decorator? Well, a decorator adds new behaviors, but it's not built for creating hierarchies. A facade? That's all about simplifying a complex system, not managing part-whole relationships. And a proxy is for controlling access. Only the composite pattern is specifically designed to solve this exact problem, treating individual parts and the whole collection in the same uniform way.
All right, so you've seen the problem and you've seen this really elegant solution. Now for the fun part. How can you spot the chance to use this in your own projects? Let's put together a super simple action plan.
Here's your mental checklist. It's really just 3 steps. First, look for a part-whole hierarchy. Think menus with submenus, or even organizational charts. Second, ask yourself, do I need to perform the same operations on both the little pieces and the big containers? Do you want to calculate the price of a single product and a whole box of products using the same method call? And finally, if your current code is getting messy because it's managing them separately, that's your cue. That's a huge sign that the composite pattern could be your answer.
So just remember, this pattern isn't only for file systems. It's for UI components, product catalogs, anything that has a tree-like data structure, where you just want to completely erase the line between a single item and a container of items. So as you head back to your work, I'm going to leave you with this question to chew on. What other hierarchies in your current projects could this pattern simplify? The answer might just be the key to cleaning up a whole lot of your code.